The episode begins early in the morning. Meredith thinks how life often feels like a race where everyone is trying to win. At Seattle Grace Hospital, that race is especially intense among the surgical interns. Meredith, Cristina Yang, Izzy Stevens, George O'Malley, and Alex Karev are constantly competing for surgeries, recognition, and the approval of their attending doctors. Earlier that morning outside the hospital, a chaotic underground bicycle race has caused multiple injuries across the city. Victims begin flooding the emergency room, giving the interns a chance to prove themselves. Everyone scrambles to grab interesting cases before someone else does. Meredith ends up treating a cocky young biker who was injured during the race. The man flirts with her constantly and refuses to take his injuries seriously. Alex Karev, eager to look confident and impressive, arrogantly pulls metal spokes from the patient's wounds without properly evaluating him first. Meredith is forced to clean up the situation and stitch the patient up, annoyed by Alex's recklessness and arrogance. The biker seems relatively fine and insists on leaving the hospital. Despite Meredith's warning that he could have internal injuries, he ignores her advice and walks out with his friends, acting as though nothing serious happened. Meredith is left uneasy, sensing something may have been missed. Meanwhile, Cristina and Izzy are assigned to a mysterious patient who was hit by one of the racers while crossing the street. The man arrives unconscious and unidentified. He has no wallet or ID, only a hotel keycard. The tests reveal devastating news. The patient is essentially brain dead, with little to no chance of recovery. Cristina quickly shifts into a pragmatic mindset. She recognizes that the patient could become an organ donor, potentially saving multiple lives. Izzy, however, struggles emotionally with the idea. She wants the man to wake up, believing that miracles can happen. The contrast between Cristina's clinical detachment and Izzy's hopeful compassion becomes one of the episode's central conflicts. While the others rush around the urge, George receives what he initially believes is a special opportunity. Richard Weber, the hospital's chief of surgery, assigns him to assist with a VIP patient, an old friend of his named Lloyd Mackey, who is dying from severe liver failure. George soon discovers the assignment is far from glamorous. Mackey is witty, flamboyant, and constantly flirts with George. The attention makes George deeply uncomfortable, especially because he worries the other interns might assume he is gay. George awkwardly tries to maintain professionalism while dealing with his own insecurities and embarrassment. Back in the ER, Cristina becomes increasingly excited about the possibility of harvesting organs from the brain-dead patient. If the man's family consents to donation, several patients could be saved, including Georgia's liver failure patient, who desperately needs a transplant. However, there is a major problem because the man is a John Doe. They cannot legally proceed without identifying him or locating his family. Izzy insists on tracking down the patient's identity, determined to ensure that his death at least helps someone else. Cristina's motivation is more surgical ambition. Organ harvest means a chance to participate in complex procedures. While searching for the patient's identity, the man suddenly deteriorates further. Izzy refuses to give up and insists on trying additional interventions to keep his organs viable long enough to find his family. Meredith helps her stabilize the patient, even though doing so bends hospital protocol. Their actions create tension with Preston Burke, who is skeptical about performing surgery on someone who is essentially already dead. Burke believes surgeons should focus on saving lives, not operating on patients who cannot be saved. At the same time, George learns that the brain-dead patient might be a perfect liver match for Mackey. Realizing this could save the chief's friend, Meredith and Cristina push George to tell Weber about the potential donor. Weber immediately becomes invested in the case. With the chief's authority behind the decision, Burke reluctantly agrees to perform the surgery necessary to preserve the organs for transplant. Eventually, the hospital tracks down the patient's identity. His name is Kevin and his wife is contacted. She arrives at the hospital devastated, hoping there is still a chance he might wake up. Izzy must deliver the heartbreaking truth that Kevin is not going to recover, that he is already brain dead and just under life support. With guidance from Miranda Bailey, Cristina carefully explains organ donation to the family. Bailey reminds Cristina that this conversation is not about medical efficiency, but about compassion and respect for the patient and his loved ones. After emotional discussions, Kevin's family agrees to donate his organs, allowing his death to save several others. Meanwhile, Meredith's earlier patient, the reckless biker, suddenly returns to the hospital in critical condition. The injuries Alex dismissed earlier were far more serious than they appeared. Internal bleeding has developed, and the patient collapses in the ER. Meredith rushes him to surgery. This time, she gets to scrub in, proving her instincts were correct. Alex, whose careless approach contributed to the oversight, is reprimanded and humiliated by Bailey. As night falls, Weber delivers the news to Mackie that he has a donor and the hospital, preparing for multiple surgeries. In the OR, Kevin's organs are harvested, including the liver needed for Mackie's transplant. The operating rooms are filled with surgeons waiting for organs that will save their own patients. For Izzy, the moment is bittersweet. She struggles with the realization that Kevin had to die in order for others to live. Cristina, who initially viewed the procedure purely as a surgical opportunity, begins to understand the emotional gravity of what organ donation truly means. George finally returns to Mackie after the surgery and delivers the life-changing news. The transplant was successful, and he is going to live. Overcome with gratitude and relief, Mackie takes George's hand. Earlier, George had refused this gesture because of his discomfort with being perceived as gay. Now, however, he quietly accepts it, showing a small but meaningful moment of personal growth. The episode ends with Meredith reflecting on the idea of winning and losing. In medicine, victories are not measured by competition between doctors, but by the number of lives saved. Sometimes, the only way to win a battle is by accepting loss somewhere else. Back at Meredith's house, the interns gather together, exhausted from the day. They watch old surgical videos recorded by Meredith's legendary mother, Ellis Gray, reminding them why they chose this profession in the first place. Meredith concludes that in the hospital, there are no real winners or losers. Only doctors trying their best to save as many lives as possible. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more movie recaps.